Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Cooking with Colbath. Again, my name is Julie Colbath. I am the coordinator of Civic Engagement in the Office of Student Life, and I'm so glad that you've joined us today, whether you're watching it live or after the fact. Today we're going to be making an apple baked oatmeal. So this is something that I grew up eating. It's really tasty. Hopefully you have most of the ingredients already. We do have some of them in the pantry. So we'll be using oatmeal. Let's see, sorry, I've already pre-measured it, so it makes it a little bit tricky to show you. This is milk. You could use any sort of milk, I think, right? That I normally buy whole milk, but if you are dairy-free, feel free to substitute some sort of alternative, right? Soy milk, almond milk. We'll be using, probably can't even see it in there, some oil. So you want to make sure it's something that's doesn't have a strong flavor. So I am using vegetable oil. We'll be using eggs. Again, the liquid ingredients, I don't want them to spill. We'll be using applesauce. Ooh. Cinnamon, which is my favorite. I normally add more than you're supposed to, but that's just me. And baking powder, which will help it rise. And then some brown sugar. And we'll be using an apple, which we will dice up. And then the recipe also calls for raisins. I am not always a huge fan of raisins, and I don't have any. So I'm gonna just omit them today. You easily could use if you have craisins or something, you can use those. The nice thing about this recipe is that you can substitute whatever fruit you want, right? So if you don't want to use apples, feel free to use peaches, blueberries. It's adaptable, right? Which is always nice. So one note, the recipe that I'm going to post, I'll be making half of it, right? So normally you would use a 9x13 pan, which is one of those long rectangular pans. I'm going to be halving it and putting it in an 8x8 pan, so it might end up a little bit thinner. So baked oatmeal is nice, it kind of feels like dessert for breakfast in some ways, kind of like a bread pudding to some degree. So you can make this and then eat it for a few days, right? So some people eat it cold, some people warm it up with a little bit of milk. It's really good, especially as a way if you don't like making breakfast, don't wake up early to make breakfast, or you're just super busy and don't necessarily have time to make breakfast, but you do want to eat breakfast. So we will mix everything together. We'll dice our apple, and then it needs to bake for 25 minutes or until it's set. So I'm recording this beforehand, so you'll see a little video or a little clip, kind of, which will condense what's 25 minutes into just a few seconds, because otherwise there's not any other prep that we need to do. So it's nice. This is kind of a throw everything together, throw it in the oven, and you're done. Okay, so let me reorient y'all. Okay, let's see, we're gonna need milk, oil, eggs, oats, brown sugar. Running out of space. Alright, so everything we're sort of adding now except for our applesauce, our cinnamon, and our diced apples. Okay. So in one bowl, we're adding sort of the wet ingredients plus the brown sugar, which is interesting. So I'm going to add the milk. eggs. And the brown sugar. And then I'm just gonna try to break up the brown sugar a little bit, right? When you measure brown sugar, you need to pack it. And then I'm trying to break up my eggs. And so then I'm just gonna whisk it so that the mixture combines. All right, seems good. So then in this bowl, we're gonna add oats, the oil, and the baking powder. Okay, so we're gonna mix this together. I'm just gonna use the same whisk, because eventually we'll use the same whisk regardless. So this is just coating the oats in the baking powder and the oil so it gets evenly spread out. And so this calls for quick oats. If you have like old-fashioned oats, that's fine. A lot of the other recipes that I saw online use both. It might just set a little bit differently, just as a heads up. But the nice thing, you can make this gluten-free and dairy-free. And you can make it vegan if you substituted like a flax egg instead of a normal egg. Okay, so we're gonna add our like liquidy mixture to a dry mixture. So a bunch of brown sugar that's set on the bottom. I'm just gonna scrape that out. Okay, then we'll mix it around. And then we're gonna let this soak for 5 minutes. While that's happening, we'll dice up our apple. So I'm gonna take these and put them in the sink. Okay, and now I'm gonna set a timer for 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm gonna move this over here. And I think we've sliced apples before, but not necessarily diced them. So diced is right, creating like little squares, sort of. So the way that I normally would dice an apple, right, is you want to create a flat surface. And so I'm going to cut near the core so that we have a quarter of the apple, and I can easily just set it down like that. And then I'm going to make some slices one way. And if you want like an even dice, you're going to have to do it a little bit more strategically. But I don't necessarily mind like larger chunks of the apple in my oatmeal bake. So I'm just going to rotate it and then make cuts the other way. So that we get little pieces that are about this big. You could cut them in half if you want a more like square dice. Up to you. So we need, since I'm halving the recipe, we need half a cup, and it looks like 1 apple probably would give us 1 cup. So if you are making a full version, you probably will just need 1 apple. So again, we'll cut the apple one way, rotate it 90 degrees, cut it the other way, and then we just have more little pieces of our apple. So we're already at half a cup, and that was only half the apple. I'm just going to cut the rest of this. So right, like I was just going around the core. So now we're at the last piece, and so you'll just make cuts. And so, I mean, you are losing a tiny bit of the apple, but not a ton. You can compost this, or you could, put it out, let the birds eat it. Or you could throw it away. Up to you. So I'm just gonna slice these into normal slices because I'll eat them later with some peanut butter, right? So that's what you would get if you didn't rotate it and chop it the other way. So I think we're letting the oats soak, right? Normally if you were making oatmeal, you would cook them on the stove, or if you do overnight oats, you let them soak overnight to get some of the moisture. So I think this like 5-minute step helps in having the oats like get softer, not necessarily cook, right? Like, but they are absorbing some of the liquid, so that it probably takes a little bit less time to cook. Because I feel like some of the recipes that I saw online, it took like 40 minutes. This one only takes 25. This is the recipe that I grew up eating, the one that my mom would make. So, okay, we're gonna leave that. We're gonna, since we have a minute, right, might as well utilize the time. You're gonna wanna make sure that you spray your pan or coat your pan. If you don't have like a spray can like this, which oftentimes I don't, I'll pour a little bit of oil into the pan and either like spread it around with paper towel or like a pastry brush or my fingers. You just want to make sure that you get it fully coated so that none of it sticks to the pan and then you have a hard time getting it out. So fully coated, sides and all. Make sure you get corners and crevices. 20 more seconds, and then we will add our apples, our applesauce, and our cinnamon. All right, it's about to go on. Okay, stir in applesauce, cinnamon, apple pieces. And if you're adding your raisins, you would do that now. But again, I don't have them, and so I will not be adding them. All right, applesauce is going in. This helps thicken it. If you are vegan or you don't eat eggs, you can substitute applesauce sometimes for eggs, so feel free to look up an equivalent. Cinnamon is in, and our apples, and then we're just going to mix it around. So the mixture did get thicker because the apples absorb, or the oatmeal absorbed some of the liquid. All right, so we just want to make sure we mix it so that everything's evenly distributed, right? You don't want one chunk with like lots of apples and another chunk with no apples. All right, so it looks good. Probably can't see super well, but this is what it looks like. Probably a little bit more cinnamony because I added a whole amount of cinnamon even though I was halving it. So then you're going to pour it into your pan that you grease. And it comes out pretty nicely, but you can use a spatula to get any extra bits from the bowl into the pan. So I'm just going to even it out a little bit so that we don't have one side is taller than the other. So you can always a battle with the camera. This is cinnamon. Sorry, it's very bright out today. So I'm just going to sprinkle some on top. If you're not a cinnamon fan, don't feel like you have to add it, or don't feel like in the mixture or on top, whatever you want. So the oven's at 325. I am going to throw this in the oven and we'll cook it for 25 minutes. So throw it in. 25 minutes. It'll seem like no time to y'all, but it will magically cook in a few seconds. So hold on. Alright, y'all. It's officially out of the oven. It cooked a little bit longer than the 25 minutes, so make sure that you cook it. All oven times are, or oven temperatures are different, so it'll take different amounts of time. I kind of took it out and then would go like this to see if the middle would sort of move. I don't know if you put a toothpick in there if it would be the same, but this is what it looks like. Potentially not the most appetizing through my computer camera. But this should make, my halved version should make 6 servings. Let me grab a knife. So I'll cut it and show you what it's like. I let it sit for about 10 minutes, but that's not necessarily necessary. So I'm gonna cut it in half. And then I'm gonna cut it in thirds. And if you feel like it's not done enough, feel free to throw it back in. Write it well. Sometimes there are parts that fall apart a little bit. Ooh. Alright, let's take a piece out. It is breaking just a tiny bit. See? So you can, it smells so good. You can eat it warm, eat it cold. Some people will put it in a bowl, put a little bit of milk. Yeah, if you try it, let me know. I did want to mention, I know some people are can be very conscious of the amount of sugar that they're eating. You could look up if a substitution if you don't want to add so much brown sugar. You could try to add maple syrup or honey, but you probably would want to cut back on the amount. Full disclosure, I'm not sure how that would affect the consistency and texture, but it could be an interesting thing to try. Yeah, so again, if you try this, let me know. If you have your own adaptations, let me know. If you have your own go-to recipes, let me know. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.